Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital.
Now before I begin, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. The other day, I was looking at a property in Texas. In the assessor records, it was listed as a little over 6 acres. Yet when I pulled up the GIS map and measured the property, it came out to 27 acres. What on earth is going on here? How could the assessor be so off in the acreage? Well, we'll solve the mystery at the end of this video. Although, spoiler alert, it has to do with undivided interest. Now, if you've never heard this term before and you're thinking of buying land or real estate in general, you should keep watching because there are a few things you should know about owning an undivided interest in a property with a co-owner. So first of all, you're probably wondering, what on earth is undivided interest? Well, undivided interest is a co-ownership scenario where each owner owns a percentage share in the property. It's called an undivided interest because the land is not divided. You are still dealing with one single undivided parcel. Thus, every owner who has undivided interest in the property still has an equal right to enjoy the entire property, but they only own a certain percentage of the lot. Think of it like owning shares in a company, except you're dealing with a property. Which leads us to number 2. How is undivided interest created in the first place? Well, the rules vary from state to state, but you will often see undivided interest talked about when 2 or more people take title to a property as tenants in common. Now, I know that this doesn't fully illuminate the issue for you, but essentially tenants in common, whereby each owner owns a separate percentage interest in the property, and they are free to gift, sell, or distribute their interest to their heirs without needing approval from the other co-owners. In this way, tenants in common are said to hold undivided interest with the other co-owners. Which leads us to number 3. You can sell your undivided interest. You do not need approval from your other co-owners. But just keep in mind that when you sell your undivided interest, you are selling only your percentage interest in the property. What this means for your buyer is that they will have to take on joint ownership of a property with what are likely strangers. For this reason, it can be hard to find a buyer who is willing to purchase only an undivided interest in a property. At this point, you may be thinking, well, I'm not looking at purchasing property with a stranger or a friend, but with my spouse. Would undivided interest apply to us if we purchase property together? And the answer is, it depends. In many states, spouses do not acquire property as tenants in common, but rather through joint tenancy. Now, with joint tenancy, it does mean that each spouse is getting 50% interest in the property. Technically, a spouse could sell their 50% interest to a third party, although in practice, of course, this is unlikely to happen. The major difference between joint tenancy and tenants in common is that each person is not free to stipulate who inherits their interest when they pass away. With joint tenancy, when one owner dies, their interest passes automatically to the surviving owner. Another caveat when spouses buy property together is that there are a few states that are called community property states. Now, in these states, property that is acquired during marriage is owned by both parties or the couple as a whole. Laws vary from state to state, but generally, both spouses would have to agree to the sale of the property as a whole. And similar to joint tenancy, when one spouse dies, their interest generally passes to their spouse. I'm sure your other major question is, what if I own undivided interest in a property and want to get rid of it but cannot sell it? Well, this does place you in a difficult position, but fortunately, you have some options. The easiest thing to do is to try and sell it to your co-owners. Alternatively, if you really like the property and just don't like owning it with other parties, you could negotiate with your co-owners to see if you could buy up their interest so that you own 100% interest in the property. Another option, especially if you're dealing with a large parcel of vacant land, is to physically subdivide the land into separate parcels so that each co-owner ends up with 100% interest in one of the smaller parcels. But of course, if you are going to try and separate out the land, more often than not, it may become difficult for you and your other co-owners to agree on which specific area each co-owner is to receive once the property is subdivided. You may have to go to court to have the court determine how the land should be partitioned. If you do decide to go this route, however, be sure to speak with an attorney. Also keep in mind that the court may also rule that the property shouldn't be subdivided, but rather sold and the funds distributed proportionally. But let's return to our sample Texas property. Now, of course, the issue here involved undivided interest. If you look at this legal description from the assessor records, you'll see that the parcel in question is 1/2 undivided interest in a little over 12 acres. But that, of course, doesn't solve the mystery of why the measured acreage in the GIS is 27 acres. Well, if you notice here, there are 5 different numbers showing up in the center of the property. So there are actually 5 different owners of undivided interest. Very confusing, no? Especially if you were a potential land buyer looking at a listing for only one of these separate owners' undivided interest. This is why it's important to understand the concept of undivided interest. You certainly don't want to be caught off guard thinking you're buying a 6-acre parcel only to find that you have actually become a co-owner with 4 strangers in a larger property. Now, do you have any stories about undivided interest? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down properties at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.